I'm sorry. My interpretation of the last situation was wrong, and I'm here to take responsibility for that and correct my mistake. My last video tackling the Erin Clover drama was terrible. There's no two ways about that. Before I start explaining what I got wrong, I want to firstly start with an apology to Erin Clover for undoubtedly contributing to the hate that's been spewed your way, no matter what my intentions may have been. I'm sure any of you who've stayed are very confused and most likely angry, but I hope you'll set aside that anger for now and just let me explain. Shortly after I uploaded my video on Erin Clover, I received a comment from Pondersprocket, who disagreed with what I presented. I decided to reach out to her on Discord, and she explained what I'd gotten wrong and why I'd gotten it wrong. I believe I've come away from that conversation with a better understanding of why my arguments were flawed, and so I unlisted the video. In this video, I will first be explaining to the best of my abilities how we interpret fictional characters, how that links back to the Erin Clover situation, why my arguments were wrong, and the message I originally wanted to send. In this section, I will largely be referencing not only my DMs with Ponder, none of which I will be showing, but a book by Scott McCloud called The Understanding of Comics, The Invisible Art as well. It's a good read that I would recommend since it explains everything better than I ever could. However, if you guys don't like reading, I will also be linking Ponder's video in the description once it comes out, as I believe she can also explain this better than I could. Scott outlines in his book how we interpret cartoons, or icons as he dubs them for simplicity of explanation. Humans are generally self-centered creatures. We tend to look for similarities between ourselves and other icons. The most prominent example of this being looking for a face where there isn't meant to be one. Whether in electronic outlets or in a few lines on a piece of paper, we are constantly looking for ways to link ourselves to other icons. And that is because we are constantly searching and building on our identity, and these icons help us to construct, understand, and keep that said identity. Let's investigate this simplistic drawing of a face. The appealing factor of this image comes from the fact that it is so simplistic. Our mind is able to fill in what is not there with ourselves, and so it becomes more appealing to us. This is also largely part of the appeal of cartoon characters. Because their faces are often less detailed than a real face, we are able to fill in what isn't there with ourselves and get attached. Please do not take this as, if you like a fictional character, you're into self-cess, because technically, you like yourself. That's not what I'm trying to get at. Both the looks and mannerisms of a character play into this, which is why you hopefully don't see people simping over Eri, who is very clearly a child in both her design and mannerisms. The less obvious and detailed a character's design is, the more gaps we fill in when we observe them as an audience. We see ourselves, flaws and all, in a character, empathize, and gradually begin to build our own interpretation of that character in our minds. In that process, we tend to leave out or ignore undesirable elements of said character, which is why there are so many fans of villains. They aren't condoning murder or whatever the villains have done. They've chosen to leave those elements out of their own interpretation. What we choose to leave out of our interpretation of the character will vary depending on whose interpretation it is, and also depends on how many features are clearly defined on that character. This line is undoubtedly blurred, especially when it comes to video games where we play as a certain character, and are thus much more likely to identify with said character. But that's another topic for another day. What our brain may fail to realize is how our character doesn't age with us. After we've tricked ourselves into believing this fictional character is alive in some way, shape, or form, we also expect them to age with us as we grow. However, that doesn't always happen. The characters from source material often stay one age for much longer than we do. So as we grow, we rarely realize that the character we're attached to hasn't aged a day since we were first introduced to them. This is where a lot of people choose to age up characters, so the content fits within their interpretation of it. It's easy for people who are minors now to just say they like characters your own age. However, what will you do when you've grown older and are told that you are no longer allowed to like a fictional character, even if in your mind that character has aged with you as you've grown? In the current climate, it seems we're expected to let go of those characters once the time comes. But is that really fair? Erin has aged up the cast of 1A to adults. The canon ages of the characters don't fit into her interpretation of them, so she changed them. While minors in the audience may focus exclusively on the fact that they are canonically minors, and thus any art drawn of them must be of them as minors, Erin no longer sees them as such. Erin has made it very clear that she sees the My Hero Academia cast as adults, not minors. She has chosen to leave the fact that they are minors out of her interpretation entirely, and so trying to cancel her on the basis that they're minors doesn't work. To Erin Clover, the cast of My Hero Academia are adults, and this is one of the only points that my last video got right. And that is the fact that people are choosing to take the least charitable interpretation of Erin that they can. I don't think I made it clear enough in my last video, but stop calling her a pedophile. The term has been thrown around far too carelessly in this situation, and I need to make it exceedingly clear that labeling her as a pedophile could ruin her life. Anyone who has contributed to this narrative should be ashamed of themselves. The same goes for the people who have gone out of their way to harass and clown on Erin. If Erin has done anything wrong, simply unfollowing her would be enough to hold her accountable. All of these drawings mocking her are not holding her accountable. They're blatant attacks designed to make Erin upset, and don't try to paint them as anything else. Just from a glance from my comment section, I know there are a lot of minors who are concerned about the fact that they see the characters as minors, and don't feel comfortable around Erin's art. To that I have to say, ignore it. Block her. Unlike Blog the Great Rogue, whose art was actively harmful by encouraging horrendous behavior that involved characters actively aged down to minors and should be reported, Erin's art isn't hurting anyone. The internet is not custom tailored to your tastes. If whatever is being posted isn't harmful, then ignore it, block it, remove it from your space instead of asking for the poster to take it down for your comfort. No one should be looking out for your comfort except for yourself. As long as no one is trying to directly threaten your comfort, it's your responsibility to make sure you don't get hurt. Where I messed up was I tried to apply a problem to a situation that didn't reflect that said problem I was trying to tackle. What I wanted to talk about was the problem with sexualizing minors in the media. But Erin Clover wasn't sexualizing minors because they were already adults to her. The video ended up painting her as someone who was actively sexualizing underage characters, which was wrong of me. However, the core of my message is something I would still like to briefly mention. Minors who are growing up are inevitably going to start experimenting with their sexuality, and that is a normal part of their growth. But when media is portraying minors as overtly sexual, it can have some very severe consequences. The idea of getting laid or being sexual in general is something that is hyped up in our culture. But too much encouragement can lead to minors who aren't fully aware of just what they're getting themselves into, and may even lead to sexual traumatization. While minors should be encouraged to experiment on their own, it shouldn't be normalized to see minors as inherently sexual if you are not yourself a minor. We're supposed to be protecting the younger generation from walking down the wrong path, and eliminating media that contributes to harmful mentalities as part of that responsibility. I hope that this time around I've made my arguments clear enough to be understood. If you want to be horny, that's your prerogative, as long as what you're into isn't actively harmful. So please stop going after Erin Clover. She's already proceeded with the necessary precautions, putting her NSFW behind a paywall only adults would have access to protect her audience. I'm sure some of the people involved in the situation came in with good intentions, but those good intentions have died over time as they've started joining the witch hunt. You may perceive these characters to be minors, but to Erin Clover, they are no longer minors, and that's just how her brain has perceived these fictional characters. I hope that anyone who's watched this far into the video has been able to understand what I'm trying to say, instead of twisting it into something else entirely. I'm not here to morally grandstand, I'm here to give my insight on situations that I find. And since I've made a big mistake this time, I'm here to correct that mistake by providing the correct information. I'll do my best to make sure something like this never happens again, and I'll see you all in the next one whenever that may be.